Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Tinker O'Toole again here with another video. Today we're going to talk about axes, splitting axes and splitting mauls. The difference between the three. Now first of all, we'll talk about your generic type axe, and this particular one is by Cyclone, and as you can see has a fairly large cutting edge as compared to a splitting axe or a splitting maul. A splitting maul can be sort of just below 90 millimeters in width, whereas these can even go up to 170 millimeters on some axes. So this one's probably, I don't know, 130 or something like that there across. So your normal axe will have a angle, a included angle, meaning included means the left and the right angle added up together. So included angle of about 15 degrees this axe is. This is probably typical. Most axes probably go up to no more than a maximum of about 18 degrees. I've seen them as low as 14 degrees, so between 14 and 18. That's the range that most axes fall into. Your splitting axe roughly goes anywhere from 25 degrees to 30 degrees angle here. And your splitting mauls, which are these ones over here, this one, and even this one, you're looking at 30 to 35 degrees, roughly. So that's roughly what they go to. So you got 15 to 18 on this type of axe. On this type here, you're looking anywhere from 25 to 30. And on the splitting mauls, you're looking at 30, 35, say 40 maximum. So yeah, roughly like that, give or take. So first of all, can you use an axe to split wood? Yeah, sure you can. But it's good for splitting smaller wood. The moment you start to split larger timber like this, you'll tend to find out that your axe tends to get stuck in there, and then you'd be constantly pulling your axe out of there. So that's why we don't use normal axe to split wood unless you want a good workout in pulling your axe out of there all the time. So the splitting axe is a little bit different. You'll see that's got very, very broad shoulders on it, and from this point here to this point here, you're talking about a 30-degree angle, and the one next to it's the same. So they're pretty much everybody copies everyone. And you'll find out that it's hollowed out. So you'll see that hollow section in there on the cheeks. That's what we refer to as the cheek. So that's all hollowed out there. This one's the same. And after we go from our splitting axes, which are generally maximum, if you look at the Fiscus over here, you're talking about 2.4 kilos. So a lot of the splitting axes can range anywhere. The Fiscus range can go anywhere from 1 kilo up to the X27 over there, which is 2.4 kilos. And then you start to get into your mauls, which start to get heavier, 2.7 kilos up to 3.6 kilos. So, and you can even, which is 3.6 kilos is 8 pound, and you can even get 10 pound ones. And there's a one over in Germany called Stotz, S-T-O-Z, German one, I think it is. It's a red one, 14 pound, and it just looks like a triangled wedge. Anyway, let's talk about the geometry. So typically this type of splitting maul will have 30-degree on it there. It can range from 25 to 30 degrees. So that's roughly what you'll find out that the splitting axes range from. 25 degrees to 30 degrees included angle, meaning that we include both sides when we state an angle. So if this was 25 degrees, then it's 12.5 either side. Same as the axe here. If this axe is 15 degrees, it's 7.5 either side. So anytime that I'm talking angles, and it'll be included angle, and that's the best way to describe it, because there is some confusion sometimes when people say, oh yeah, it's 30 degrees, and they think that it's 30 degrees on one side, meaning that it would be 60 degrees. So seen it written wrong many times on some websites where people don't have a lot of experience explaining what they're talking about. So just remember that when you're reading angles of axes, it's normally included. Now another axe that's a little bit different, it weighs 2.7 kilo. It's a little bit higher than the others, is the Spear and Jackson. And the next one is a cheap Chinese one. So it's a block splitter or maul. And I had to get an angle grinder to that and change the angle. And one other thing, I was talking to a person there that makes axes here in Australia. He makes them for a lot of the wood choppers. And he was agreeing with me that some of the time, some of the ones that you're buying out of the shop really don't have the right angles on them. And the only thing that I will say, out of these axes that you've got here sitting on the bench, even the Cyclones had the wrong angles on them. So these two Cyclone ones here, they're made in Australia, they had the wrong angles on them. The Spear and Jackson, that's this one here, totally the wrong angle. And if you have a look, you can see how much of an angle I've put on it. It only had a beveled angle of about 2.5 millimeters. I had to put that much of a beveled angle on it to get it to the right angle. It was about 60 degrees. Totally wrong angle. Okay, so what is the beveled angle? What should it be? Look, the beveled angle should be anywhere from about 30 degrees to about 45. So that's what you're looking at, around about 30 degrees to 45 degrees maximum. And that's what you'll find on all the splitting mauls, will be the same. Now, interesting enough, I believe that Fiscus have probably got their geometry better than a lot of other manufacturers out there. And we'll just have a look at the Fiscus for a minute there and talk about its geometry. Because its geometry, if you have a look at it, it is, and I'll go over that, its geometry on its wedge, so on the cheeks of the face, this is a 25 degree included angle. And the actual angle on the bevel is 30 degrees. So that beveled angle there is 30 degrees. And it weighs 2.4 kilograms. So that's the X27. And every single person that uses that is pretty much impressed. So one thing about the Fiscus is they really do make good axes, and they've got the right geometry, and they put the right angles on them, so you don't have to even touch them. Why are they putting the wrong angles on? Look, I don't know. Maybe I got no idea. But all as I do know that I've had to reface these, and except for the Fiscus and the S-wing. Look at the angle on that S-wing. Now that S-wing, we'll just go over that angle. The S-wing has 42 degrees from this point here on that angle there. So from that point to that point, on included angle is 42 degrees. The actual angle on the bevel is 38. This particular one that I've got here, I had to take an angle grinder and grind, a 9-inch angle grinder, and grind both sides off, because look at that angle there. I brought this brand new, and no joke, it had a 105 degree angle on this. So this had a 105 degree angle, and if you look up in the top corner, that's what it looked like. So they're selling them in the shops like this with huge angles. I've brought 3 of them, and I've gone from 65 degrees, 85 degrees, and 105 degrees. If you go more than 45 degrees on that beveled angle, you're going to find out it's going to bounce off the timber, especially in dense timber, dense hardwood. It's just going to bounce off, simple as that. And that's exactly what it did. It just kept on bouncing off. So you want to be spending more time splitting than bouncing, rather than more bouncing than less splitting. And that's the problem with some of these mauls or splitting axes. If they don't have the right angles on them, you'll spend more time bouncing. That's not what you want to do. A splitting maul or a splitting axe that bounces can be normal for that to happen. And what we've got here is an offcut of a log, and I'd just like to briefly discuss, when you are splitting a log, which is the best way to split it. A lot of people prefer to strike at the edges because this is the way that the growing rings go around, and a lot of people believe that it is easier to split that way. Do not split in the middle. It'll start bouncing all over the place. I tend to split here. I like to bring my, if I just turn this around, if I'm going to split a bit of timber, I like to strike roughly in that position. But as I said, a lot of times it can be easier to split it when you split at the edges. A lot of people split at the edges. So, and it came down to what I was saying before, is it depends on your technique. So the most important thing, whether you've got a splitting axe or splitting mauls. Now the other thing, here's another interesting thing. Why is it that a splitting maul or a block splitter is a totally different shape than a splitting axe? Well, the main reason is, when you look at this shape here, this is a 2 kilo splitting axe. Then you jump to 2.7, then you jump to, this one's 3.6, this is 2.7, and then this is 3.6 also. So 6 pounder, 8 pounder, 8 pounder, 6 pounder. If you increase the angle like this on these 8 pounders to 35 degrees, as opposed to, say, anywhere from, this is 30 degrees, but the moment that you increase this angle to 35 and you don't have this large curve, you start to get more metal. It becomes more heavier. So that's why these large splitting mauls are very wide in size, because if you want 3.6 kilograms or an 8 pounder, you need this to be very wide so that you've got the bulk of metal. Because down the bottom here, this part on the sledgehammer, this is 70 millimeters in width. Whereas you look at something like this is much thinner. This is lucky if it's 50 millimeters. So, and if you look here, look how small these are. These are very small. They're lucky if they're 30 millimeters. So with a block splitter, you'll find out that all the block splitters will be about 35 degrees in angle. Whereas if you look at a fiscus, if you remember before, I said that the fiscus is 25 degrees. So this is 25 degree angle here. So on the fiscus maul, you've got an extra 10 degrees, and that extra 10 degrees allows much more metal, and that way it can be a lot heavier. So your splitting mauls are much heavier, so your angles can be a little bit different. You'll read stories that will turn around and say they don't need to be sharp. Well, I sort of disagree with that, because I sort of believe that the sharper it is, the easier it will get into the timber. So that's your choice out there. Your choice is 2 kilos, 2 kilos, 2 kilos. Then we jump into our splitting type mauls, 2.7, 3.6, 2.7, 3.6 kilo. Or in the old terminology, 6 pound, 8 pound, 6 pound, 8 pound. 8 pound is probably as big as what you really need. I probably tend to like to use, say, 2 pounder or a 2.7 kilo, or sorry, not a 2 pounder, a 2 kilo splitting axe is fine for small type timber up to about 6 inches. The moment you get larger than 6 inches, I want to go to 2.7 kilo, which is this and this, this is a Spear and Jackson, and that's the S-wing. So they're fine. They're 6 pounders, and they're good at least up to a foot in diameter, which is about the size of the loggets over there. And your larger mauls, which is the ISO Pro Core, that's an 8 pounder, and that's an 8 pounder, so that's a 3.6 kilo. They're good up to much larger timber. Yeah, okay, so what I've done is got rid of some of the other ones that were on the table and just rearranged these ones. And these are the ones that is my preference. First of all, if you look at the Fiscus range, they all got that type of wedge. And that wedge typically is 25 degrees and 30 degrees on top. And that one there is the X27, which is 2.4 kilograms, which is probably good to split timber up to about a foot in diameter. And that's about it. It's pretty hard wood we've got here in Australia, so you'll be able to split timber, say from 4 inches up to about a foot. I do have a formula, and my formula is 4 inches. For every 4 inches of width, I like to have about a kilogram. So the next one is the Cyclone splitting super splitter axe, as they call it, and that's got a total weight. Well, it's got a 2 kilo head plus the handle. Wooden handle weighs about 700 grams, so that's got a total weight of about 2.7 kg, which is a little bit heavier than the total weight of this one, because this is 2.4 kilo and it's only got 2.5 kg weight. With the handle, carbon fibre handles are very light. The next one jumps up, that's a Spear and Jackson here. This one, when I brought it, I knew that the angle that was on there was totally wrong. It only had about a 3mm bevel, and the angle was, I don't know, about 80 degrees, which meant that that was just going to bounce off the timber. So totally wrong angle, but I brought it knowing that, and I refaced it. I'll put a little video on the end here. It's only a short video about refacing the Spear and Jackson. The next one is the S-wing. It's also 2.7 kg, so it's got the same weight as this one. Handle's a little bit longer, but it works a little bit better than this one. Just a bit better design. And if you come to the front, and I've mentioned before, you've got about 42 degrees from the top to the side here, and 38 degrees up on there. So S-wing really does work well, made out of high quality carbon steel. Next is the cheap China one from China. It had to, same thing, when I brought that, it's an 8 pounder. So the S-wing is a 6 pounder. Then I wanted to go to an 8 pounder, so I just brought a cheap Chinese one. It had a 105 degree angle on the wedge. I had to get the 9-inch angle grinder and reface both sides of that, and put another micro bevel of about 40 degrees on there. So this ended up being about 35 degrees. And the one that really does work well, and that's not just me saying it, that's every single website that I've ever seen and every YouTube that I've ever seen that has the Fiscus maul, the 8 pound maul, everyone gives it a thumbs up. Really does work good. It's an 8 pound maul. It's not something you want to be swinging all day long. So these are the ones that I really like. Now, as I said, I knowingly brought the Spear and Jackson, and I knowingly brought the Chinese one, knowing that it had the wrong angles. And I got this off Axemen. And what this is a disc. It's got all your different angles on it. So we start from 14 degrees, go up in 1 degree segments until we get to 30 degrees. Then we go up in 2 degree segments until we get to 42, then we jump to 45. So this comes from Pete, who's the guy that owns Axemen down there in Woodend, Victoria, Australia. He produces a lot of axes, racing axes and working axes. So this is a working axe gauge. He makes 3 different type of gauges. So he makes one specifically for racing axes, and this one I got off him for the working axe. So the whole idea of using that gauge, if you do reface it, there are specific tools that you can get for refacing. They're refacing jigs, and they fit on grinders, bench grinders, and they allow you to reface. So the end conclusion is, if you've got a small weighted splitting axe, it's going to be for a small logs. As you go up in size, you're in the size of the log that you're going to split, you're going to need extra weight. So it really comes down to that. You want a small splitting axe, it's going to split small timber. Medium sized timber up to a foot, you're going to need something around 2.7 kilo. The moment that you start wanting to split timber over a foot in diameter, and it's hardwood, so we're not talking about softwood. Softwood's pretty easy to split. So the moment that you want to start splitting hardwood over a foot, you really need to go to your 8-pounders. 8-pound, now there are 10-pounders out there, but the thing is, there's not a lot of 10-pounders out there, even 8-pounders. You go to the local hardware store, a little bit more difficult to find an 8-pounder. You'll find the 6-pounders much more easily, and you'll find your 2-kilogram type ones fairly easy. But to me, the clear winner for performance and size is definitely Fiskars or Fiskus, whichever way you want to say it. I think they're the world leaders in splitting axes. I don't know what their sales are, but all as I can tell you that anywhere here in Australia, major hardware store, you'll find a Fiskar axe on the shelf. Simple as that. And that tells me one thing, that they're popular. So look, thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up. Bye for now. That is razor sharp. So what you want with the oil stone is to try and keep it at the right angle, and then just tilt it very slightly the last couple of strokes. That is razor sharp. I'm happy with that. Now, if that's under 40, I'll be happy with that. So we're going to check that. That is a beautiful finish.